What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of my podcast, the Garden in the Desert podcast, El Jardín en el Desierto podcast. Soy Jalen, tu host, y vengo aquí para discutir y explorar temas que pueden convertirte en una persona mejor y transformarte en una persona mejor también. Una persona más lista, una persona más libre y una persona más informada y conectada con el mundo total. In this episode, we are talking about one of my favorite topics, y'all, conspiracy theories. I love a good conspiracy theory. I am a conspiracy theorist at heart, if you know me personally. And y'all know I had to rock my Rick and Morty sweatshirt that I love so much because we know that Grandpa Rick is a huge conspiracy theorist and he's not alone. I mean, so many Americans believe in conspiracy theories, even more than people in other countries, and especially when it comes to conspiracy theories about our government and the medical field. So I really wanted to do a two-part episode. This is going to be part one and really just delve deep into the topic of conspiracy theories. So on this week, I'm going to explore what exactly are conspiracy theories and the history and the psychology behind why they are so prevalent and why we believe them so heavily. But then also I want to spend some time starting to get into some of the biggest conspiracy theories in the Black community and dispelling some of the facts or fiction surrounding them. So these two episodes are going to be a little bit sensitive, so please bear with me. If you're a sensitive person, you may be offended. But I think that conspiracy theories in this time, especially as we prepare for the next election, are super, super important. And it's important for us to be able to understand what's real and what's false. So sit back, relax, get some tea, get a blunt, and let's get into the big Black conspiracy theories of the 21st century. Okay. Can you tell I'm already excited? Because I'm like so hyped for this. Okay. The psychology behind conspiracy theories. Americans, we are uniquely poised to believe in conspiracy theories. There was a study that was published in the American Journal on Political Science in 2014 that found that half of the US population believes in at least one political or one medical conspiracy theory. And let's be honest, that number has probably increased drastically since Trump has become our president, since the dawn of the Trump era. So the first American conspiracy theories actually date all the way back to the early colonial period, where European settlers, if you guys know a woman named Ann Coulter, I believe is her name. She claims that she's like descended from the original American settlers, and she says like settlers. So the original American settlers, most notably Cotton Mather, who was a Puritan minister in New England in the late 1600s, early 1700s, they basically were going around spreading conspiracy theories that Native Americans were demons controlled by Satan, who were out to kill and murder and rape all of the European settlers in an attempt to claim their land. What's ironic about this American conspiracy theory is if Native Americans had actually been on that wave, like who knows what America would look like today. So I just find that's one super, super, super ironic because they would probably all still be alive and wouldn't have gotten murdered themselves or died from disease that the European settlers brought with them over to this continent. But that's not the point of my episode. We can do an episode on Native American history. I would love to do that at some point. But I bring that up because that was one of the first known conspiracy theories in American history. The second most famous one is the Salem witch trials. So a lot of people already know about the Salem witch trials. They've done like tons of movies about it, tons of like historical documentaries about it. Like basically, it was a period of hysteria where hundreds of people, mostly women and children, were accused of witchcraft, and they were hanged at this or burned at the stake, basically. And so people really believed that these women and these children were witches and that they needed to kill them or murder them to basically restore society to balance, when really what was happening was that there was a lot of men who felt like their religious power, being ministers, Puritan preachers, whatever, was being threatened by societies of women. Since the colonial times, obviously, countless conspiracy theories in American history have spread. So we have tons of things from like the moon landing being a hoax, aliens in Area 51, the earth being flat, which I know that conspiracy theory got a lot of attention a few years ago when Kyrie Irving was talking about it or joking about it, whatever. There's conspiracy theories that 9/11 was a hoax. There's conspiracy theories that the Sandy Hook massacre was also a hoax perpetuated by gun reform advocates, and that the families of the children who were killed were paid actors who were being paid by gun control advocates to basically perpetuate this idea of like, if we can prove that guns are bad, then we can take away gun rights from gun owners. Those families, by the way, the families of the children who were killed, they were actually harassed by right-wing conspiracy theorists, which is so sad because it's already bad enough to like lose your child. I couldn't imagine also being harassed by a bunch of conspiracy believing lunatics, because let's be honest, guys, some of us, we're kind of nutty when it comes to these conspiracy theories, and some of them don't have any basis in fact whatsoever. Pizzagate is another common one that was going on during the election in 2016, which suggested that Hillary Clinton and other Democrats were running a child sex ring basically out of a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. And a gunman actually showed up to that pizza parlor to try to save the lives of these children who he believed were locked in a basement. A conspiracy theory that really, really pisses me off, like, I swear this is one of my pet peeves. Like, if you believe it's conspiracy theory, like, I don't like you. And I'm totally okay with saying that because I don't like you if you believe this. I'm sorry, you're racist. It's the Obama birther scandal. It's basically this theory that he was born in Kenya and his birth certificate was faked. And I actually met a woman a few weeks ago who was from Hawaii, who wasn't even white. She's Asian American, and she still believes that this is true and claims that Obama was born in Kenya, and based off of something that he said basically in Dreams of My Father, which is like his first book, I believe, before he became president. And I asked her, I was like, have you read his book? Like, have you read Dreams of My Father? And she's like, nah. And I'm like, so you believe a conspiracy theory, but you literally like never did any of the work to like find out if it was real or true or not. And her argument was that she's from Hawaii and that she's like has a Hawaiian birth certificate herself, and that her birth certificate doesn't look like his birth certificate, so it must be fake. I'm like, lady, you're like twice his age. Like, maybe they changed the birth certificate format from like the 40s when you were born to like, I don't know, when he was born in like the 60s and 70s. Like, I can't. Another conspiracy theory that I swear like drives me up a wall is that global warming is a hoax perpetuated by the Chinese to basically stunt American manufacturing, and make American manufacturing less competitive. Like, I'm not saying that China doesn't want to make our manufacturing less competitive, but like, do y'all really not believe that this global warming thing is real? Like, why would what motivation do scientists have to lie? Like, they don't get paid to lie. Like, they go to their labs and they do research and they report it. Like, that's literally all they get paid to do. So it's just, another one that's popular is that the government is covering up links between autism and, the vaccine for autism. So basically, like, they're saying that the government knows that vaccines can cause autism, and that they are covering up that link so that more children will get vaccinated and then possibly end up with autism. And so I'm not gonna harp on that one too much because I don't know much about vaccine research. I know that's a really people get really hot about that topic. But what I will say is that there has been a recent increase in measles outbreaks because parents are choosing not to vaccinate their kids. And so when you're not vaccinating your child, then if your child is sick, it can get a disease that we can prevent, which can then get spread on to other children. So it's a community debate that I don't really feel comfortable taking a side on, but I definitely look at the scientific data, and the increase in measles and other types of diseases is definitely concerning. And I mean, I was vaccinated as a child. I came out fine. I know that autism is more common in boys, so I don't really know what the link between the vaccine and the gender of the child really matters. But if you guys have information about that, I would love to look into that deeper as well. Another one that's super popular is that the healthcare industry is hiding the cure for cancer and AIDS, which, I mean, we're going to talk about AIDS in a minute. So what exactly defines a conspiracy theory? So a conspiracy theory is a belief that a select group of individuals are secretly working to disrupt or undermine the greater good, create harm, negatively affect society, or hide a sinister secret. And to be fair, I know I just listed off a bunch of conspiracy theories that, probably aren't real, but I do want to say that some conspiracies are real and that conspiracies do exist. So the most notable conspiracy is the Watergate scandal, where on June 17th of 1972, President Nixon and his administration orchestrated a break-in at the Democratic National Committee, and then they basically covered that shit up. It can be difficult, especially with the media today and with the internet and the way it's not regulated and the way that I feel like it needs to be at a certain point. It's difficult to separate fact from fiction. Basically, we have these algorithms on YouTube and on other social media platforms that are basically designed to give us what's called confirmation bias. So basically what happens is these algorithms are sending us down the rabbit hole, and then we are essentially finding information that validates theories or beliefs that we already hold that may or may not be true. And the truth is that we're looking at conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory, and it's recommending theory after theory after theory after theory to us. And if we're not diligent about understanding what's real and what's not and making an effort to separate fact from fiction, it's really, really easy to slip into this kind of detached view of the world and reality. I say this all the time. Human beings are not as smart as we think we are. We're kind of stupid, you guys. We believe half-truths, we form connections where there are none, and we erroneously assign importance to political and social events that may not actually be there. The reality is that conspiracy theories tend to proliferate in times of rapid social change. So for example, the settlers in the early Americas, they were in a new land, in a new place, and they're trying to make sense of this new world that they're living in. Feminists were fighting for women's rights at a certain point in time when a lot of other conspiracy theories were popping up. We had the election of the first Black or non-white president with all those different Obama conspiracy theories. We were trying to elect the first female president when we had all these conspiracy theories about Pizzagate and whatnot. So you really just have to look at the social and political climate of our times and understand that the belief in conspiracy theories often connects to these times of social unrest and social change that maybe some members of our community and our country are just not quite ready to accept yet. People who feel afraid or disenfranchised are very distrustful of social institutions, and they tend to move away from facts. Like the fact that vaccines prevent the spread of highly communicable diseases. In 1980, a civil liberties lawyer and author named Frank Donner wrote that conspiracism reveals a fundamental insecurity about who Americans want to be versus who we are. That really spoke to me, because I think that a lot of times we have this aspirational view of what this country could be, or who we could be as citizens of this country. And the reality is we ain't there yet, y'all. We ain't there yet. Y'all thought y'all was ready for a Black man in office, but y'all wasn't. Y'all thought y'all was ready for a woman in power, but y'all wasn't. Y'all thought we were ready for all these different, social advancements, and the reality of the situation is that we're just not. So what do psychologists say about the psychology behind why we're prone to believe in conspiracy theories, or who might be more likely to perpetuate conspiracy theories? So a study published in 2018, European Journal of Social Psychology, found that people who believe in conspiracy theories tend to have a greater need for cognitive closure. Cognitive closure is basically the desire to find an explanation when none is available. I am super guilty of this. If you know me in real life, you know that I am always trying to get to the bottom of everything. People, situations, I just feel this crazy need that I have to know. I make the joke about, there's an Indiana Jones movie, and I'm not sure entirely which one. I don't remember if it's The Lost Ark, but at the end of the movie, there's the Russian scientist, and she's the villain, and they get to the cave, and they finally find the treasure, and she's I want to see, I want to know, and the alien eats like her whole brain and like her like body like explodes or something. And I'm like, no, like that's literally me. Like I just genuinely like want to know. It's like the red pill or the blue pill debate, right? Like some people are totally okay with just taking the blue pill and like not knowing and just like living in ignorance. And I'm like, no, Morpheus, give me the red pill. Like I need to know. And so that need for me to have that cognitive closure makes me more likely to believe in conspiracy theories when there's no like factual evidence or qualitative evidence to support a question that I might have. They also found that people who believe in conspiracy theories have a desire to be unique or to not necessarily fit in with like what other people in society believe, which I know I'm definitely guilty of too, because I'm like, y'all not supposed to spill me or like feed me this like this recycled garbage. Like I need to know something different. Other studies have found that conspiracy theorists are more likely to have a cognitive bias called hypersensitive agency detection or teleologic thinking. This is basically over attributing events to hidden forces, purposes, or motives. So it's like you're kind of like a super cynic. Once again, guilty over here. Like I sometimes have to check myself because I am so cynical about like people and like their motives. Cause like, you know, I've had like, I wouldn't say I've had like a hard life. Like I'm extremely blessed and I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to have like a mother who looks out for me so much and just like different resources, like going to a good school and things like that. But yeah, I just think very darkly, and I just know, you know, I think that human beings are beautiful creatures, but I also think that we're really disgusting creatures too. And I just know the depths that sometimes we will go to get what we want. And so I tend to find or look for like hidden motives behind everything instead of just accepting things at face value. They also found that belief in conspiracy theories is associated with lower levels of education and analytical thinking. Now that's not me, because I'm highly educated and I am an analytical thinker, but there have been links to a lower level of education and belief in conspiracy theories, because maybe you don't know how to properly look for information that can help you decipher what's real and what's not, what's fact and what's fiction. A report in Political Psychology in 1994 shared research that belief in one conspiracy theory greatly increased your chance of believing in subsequent conspiracy theories. That also makes a lot of sense, because if you notice, people who tend to believe that there is aliens in Area 51 also tend to believe that Bigfoot exists or that like there's UFOs flying around. So they kind of go like hand in hand. A lack of trust is really what sparks conspiracy theories in a lot of communities, but particularly in communities that feel marginalized. And in a moment, I'm going to break down some of the conspiracy theories that are super, super popular in the Black American community and why Black Americans in particular are susceptible to believing a lot of conspiracy theories. Okay, so on the last portion of the show, we talked about general American population belief in conspiracy theories. And now I want to focus on the Black and the African American community in general and our belief in conspiracy theories, because the people who feel the most disenfranchised are the ones who are the most likely to believe in conspiracy theories. And no group has more reason to feel disenfranchised in America than Blacks directly descended from slaves. Because of the history of slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, housing and workplace discrimination, among other forms of prejudice, are we really surprised that so many of us, myself included, believe or have previously believed in many anti-Black conspiracy theorists? Researchers in the Netherlands published a study in Applied Cognitive Psychology in 2018 that found that belonging to a minority identity, in their case they were studying Muslims living in the Netherlands, increased the likelihood of believing in both conspiracy theories related to that specific minority and conspiracy theories in general. They found two reasons for this. The first is the unpleasant feeling of not being fully regarded as a true member of society. It's a big one. People of color know that our lives don't matter as much as the majority's does. And that constant thought makes us way more on edge when it comes to the motivations of our government. There's also number 2, which is a broader concern about the treatment of one's minority group. So it's no secret that people of color have experienced prejudice and outright racism, even resulting in extreme circumstances like death, whether that be from things like police brutality or from lynchings. So there's just a just general sense of worry or concern that we carry around with us at all times. A different study that was published in the European Journal of Social Psychology also found the unpleasant feeling of not being a fully regarded member of American society within African Americans. This theory is called social devaluation, which is basically that society, like I said, values us less than other members of society. We know that Black female lives especially matter less than white lives in the United States. And because of this fact, backed by the historical mistreatment of African Americans by the criminal justice system, by the legal system, by the housing system, the workplace systems, Blacks are way more likely to embrace conspiracy theories than whites, according to a lot of research. So let's break down some of the facts and fiction surrounding some of the most popular anti-Black conspiracy theories. The first. And I'm about to piss some of y'all off, and I'm sorry. Okay, first one is that crack, cocaine, and drugs have been funneled into minority, aka Black communities in the United States by the United States government. This theory became super popular in the 80s and 90s, which was the prime time for cocaine. Boys in the Hood, the movie by John Singleton, came out in 1991. And one of the major themes of that movie was that because the white man couldn't kill us off through slavery, they're now going to turn us on ourselves so that we kill ourselves off. In 1996, Gary Webb, who was a reporter for the San Jose Mercury News, wrote a series of expose pieces called Dark Alliance, which claim that the CIA, in dealings with Central American drug lords and San Francisco and LA drug kingpins, pumped drugs into African American communities for its own profit. Many prominent African American leaders joined in on the conspiracy theory, including Representative Maxine Waters, Auntie Maxine, Derek Z. Jackson, who was a reporter for the Boston Globe, Wilbert Tatum, an editor for the Amsterdam News, and the Congressional Black Caucus. They even pushed Congress and the Justice Department to investigate and declassify a report that was later released in 1998 to basically try to find out if there was any truth to these accusations. The CIA was ultimately cleared by the justice system and Congress, with basically being able to prove that there was no factual evidence to support these claims. And Webb was accused by many of his colleagues at the New York Times, as well as the Washington Post, of exaggerating certain facts in his expose pieces. He even later admitted himself in an interview that there was no hard evidence to support any of his claims. However, that belief that crack specifically was funneled into African American communities by the government spread like wildfire, and it's still largely believed today. My verdict on this one, guys, is going to be fiction. I don't underestimate the CIA's ability to cover up anything. Like, I genuinely don't. But as someone who probably has a more well-rounded view of recreational drugs, I understand how the drug market works, and I understand the allure of recreational drugs, and I know how immensely popular cocaine was in the 80s. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, cocaine is kind of lit. Like, it's a great high, and that's why it was so popular, because people were like, wow, this feels amazing. And when anything is popular, when anything is hot, when anything is trendy, we know what the first thing to come out is knockoffs. Like, people be wearing knockoff Gucci, people be getting fake stuff done to their bodies. Like, let's be honest. We know that when things are trendy, cheaper variations are an inevitable byproduct of the success of the original product. And so I believe that drug dealers converted their they knew that they needed to push this product, this super high quality, high cost cocaine, and they decided to create a cheaper version of crack that made the drug accessible for lower income users, and basically caused the crack cocaine epidemic, because they wanted to make more money, and they were like, how can we sell this product to more people? Well, we can sell a version of the product that not only is drastically cheaper, but also drastically more potent, which will get you hooked even more, and then we can make crazy money. Now, I'm not saying that That part of it is very, 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 very true. And for that, I genuinely believe that this conspiracy theory is false. Like I said, I'm sorry to those of you all who believe that it's true. However, like I said in the previous segment, there is truth to every single conspiracy theory. They don't come out of thin air, right? There's some backing for why people believe this to be true. And the reality is that the penalties for crack-related offenses were significantly higher than those for cocaine-related offenses at a rate of 100 to 1. So these increased sentences disproportionately affected the Black community because Blacks were way more likely than whites to use crack. That's not a conspiracy. That's a fact. And you can look at the criminal justice system and how many Black people have been imprisoned for drug-related offenses that have been blown completely out of proportion, and we need change in the criminal justice system. That's a fact. That's not a conspiracy. And if the belief in that conspiracy theory is what prompts you as an individual to take action to solve and work to improve the criminal justice system in our country, then I don't have a problem with you believing it. I just think it's important that we understand the truth of what happened in the 80s and the 90s, and with a lot of our family members and parents, for some of us even, who were addicted and maybe still are addicted to crack. Many of us, myself included, have intimate family members, whether it's siblings, parents, cousins, aunties, uncles, who are addicted to crack. And that's a pain that can be really, really, really difficult to rationalize away because, like I mentioned before, you're thinking to yourself, there's no logical reason as to why this person who maybe had a bright future, who maybe was a loving father, maybe was a loving mother, all of a sudden is now addicted to this horrible drug. And so it can be easy to want to blame someone else instead of acknowledging the fact that the choice to use drugs is a personal choice, and we all have to take responsibility for our choices. So if you are gonna drug it up, please drug it up responsibly. And y'all don't do crack, okay? Call me up if you want to do something a little bit better, but we gotta leave the crack. Crack is whack, okay, guys? Crack is whack, and so is meth, and so is heroin. But like I said, we'll do a whole episode on which drugs you should try it and drugs you should avoid it. The next really popular Black conspiracy theory is the Black genocide through disease. So these have been kind of perpetuated for a while, and it's natural for Black people to distrust the medical community, just like the American population in general has a pretty large distrust for the medical community. So the history of African Americans believing in a government-sponsored form of genocide date all the way back to slavery, like I said, for good reason. We mistrust medical and public health institutions because historically we have been brutalized by them. We all know a cousin, a father, a relative who literally never goes to the doctor no matter what. And a lot of that distrust comes from medical experiments that were conducted on African Americans as recently as the 20th century. Take, for example, the Tuskegee syphilis study from 1932 to 1972. The federal government studied the effects of untreated syphilis on 400 low-income African-American males in Alabama. These men were not treated for their syphilis while participating in the study. And I don't know if y'all have ever had syphilis. I personally have never had syphilis, but I know that syphilis is an extremely painful and extremely difficult disease, and they were being studied without treatment. It was also a super common STD before the widespread use of condoms in the later half of the century. And actually, a little fun family facts about my family is that my great-great-grandfather, I'm not sure if it's my great-great-grandfather or my great-great-uncle, but one of them had syphilis, and that's how he died. The most controversial health-related conspiracy, of course, surrounds HIV and AIDS. So there's two parts to this theory. The first is that the government produced AIDS in a laboratory to kill Black people and the poor, and that two, a cure for AIDS is being currently hidden or kept away from the public by the government, and being kept away from the poor and those who need it. A study published in the Journal of Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndromes found that 44% of Blacks believe taking medicine to treat HIV and AIDS means that you're a guinea pig for the government. 27% believe that HIV and AIDS was made in a government lab. 48% believe that HIV and AIDS is a man-made virus. 15% believe it is a genocide specifically targeted against Blacks. 16% believe it was created by the government to control the Black population, and 53% believe the cure is being withheld from the poor. Researchers also found that these beliefs remain consistent regardless of income or educational levels, which I found astounding. Men and women were equally as likely to believe the theories, but men strongly linked their belief in the conspiracy theory about HIV and AIDS to their decision to use condoms. The stronger a man believed a conspiracy about HIV or AIDS, the less likely he was to use a condom. This data is super troubling for a lot of reasons, but mainly because while blacks account for only 12% of the US population, they accounted for 43% of new HIV diagnoses in 2017. The rate of new diagnoses in our community is 8 times that of whites and 2 times that of Latinos, with the rate among black men being the highest of any group. So, is there any truth to these HIV-related conspiracy theories at all? Well, let's talk about where AIDS and HIV came from. The first reported case was in 1959 in the Congo, and researchers believe that the virus originated from chimpanzees and mutated and transferred to humans who ate the affected meat, which is like, I can't even imagine eating a chimpanzee. I'm not trying to judge anybody for like their diet. I know I sound super close-minded, but that's just like we're already starting off on like a really, really bad foot. In the 1980s, though, the virus spread primarily among gay men in urban areas in the United States, and quickly became a pandemic. And it mainly affected poor, gay, and the African American community. And of course, we know to this day there is still no known cure for the virus. Because the virus spread so quickly, and the fact that it was a totally new disease that targeted a very specific marginalized community, it's really no surprise that the theory spread the way that they did. And, I think there's always going to be a lingering question about it. I mean, for me, I still have a question mark about it. Like I mentioned before, I don't know too much about medicine. Like that's not like my area of research expertise, but I do think that it's a big question mark for a lot of people, and it's very, very concerning when you see so many people getting sick and dying, and there really isn't much known about the disease. However, I do acknowledge that I don't think it's the public in general. I don't think that we really know a lot about a lot of diseases out there. I bet you there's a lot of diseases out there that they deal with in like the NIH and different research institutions that we have no idea about. The good news about it is that the more we know about the disease, the more we can treat it, and hopefully the closer we can get to a cure. And the less stigma surrounding the disease is better because it gives a better quality of life for those affected. So the more we talk about it, the more we're willing to deal with this sensitive subject, the better off we as a society are going to be. Personally, to me, whether AIDS is man-made or not, it's something that you should freaking protect yourself against. So use a condom, just like you want to prevent other STDs, right? Like, sexual health is so serious, you guys, and we owe it to ourselves and to our partners and to our children and to the community health in general to be responsible. I know that the condom might not feel good. I know that the condom might not be popular. I know you might not have one. But seriously, guys, if you're not in a serious monogamous relationship, and I'm talking about monogamous, then stop it. Really, stop it. Be responsible or be abstinent, but don't be out here just spreading around diseases because that's disgusting. And it really does affect people's lives. And I think that people treat it way too casually. But while we're on the topic of contraception, let's talk about another common Black health conspiracy theory, and that's about birth control being a form of Black genocide. So this one might be a little bit outdated, but I thought it was really interesting because I know that the whole Black feminist movement is has really taken form over the past couple of years with social media. And so, well, I shouldn't say it's taken form over the past couple of years because that's not true. It's always been around. We've always had super strong, super poppin' Black feminists, but I think the Black feminist movement has, gotten a lot of criticism on social media. And so I think it's important to go into this conspiracy theory because the argument dates all the way back to 1964 during President Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty, which provided government funding for birth control, giving low-income women access. it was strongly criticized by many Black power activists, including the Black Panther Party and the Nation of Islam, because they saw Black women's use of birth control as a way to decrease the Black population. At that time, the belief was that in order to achieve Black political power and increase Black political wealth and social standing, we needed to increase the Black population, and birth control was a genocidal attack that would prevent us from being able to do so. Dr. Martin Luther King, though, who I'll talk about in next week's episode, was a strong proponent of the pill, however, saying that it actually gave Black men a better command over his personal economic situation, keeping the number of his children within his monetary means. I mean, I do find it ironic that we're talking about birth control for women and the focus is on men, but I'm gonna cut Dr. Martin Luther King some slack because, that's just how it was back then. So Black feminists did share a lot of the suspicion that some of the other Black power movement makers shared around birth control, as well as abortion being, a form of Black genocide because of the history of sterilization of Black women in the country. So the history of sterilization of Black mothers, that reached its peak in the 1950s and 60s. And the irony about that is that during slavery, Master was desperate for us to have more kids. He was trying to make Black women, when he wasn't raping us himself, he was forcing Black male slaves to rape us to basically be able to produce more children, because any children produced by his slaves were automatically slaves. So it's ironic that then if you fast forward to more modern, I don't know, you see I'm keep scratching my chin is like itching. Maybe it's like all these conspiracy theories giving me the goosebumps. But if you think about it, it's ironic because now in more modern times, the white medical establishment wanted us to stop having kids so bad that they went so far as to go in after Black mothers gave birth and literally prevent them from being able to have more children. Even today, in the 21st century, we know that Black women are not given the same access to quality prenatal health care as white women. According to the CDC, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. This low-key scares me. Sometimes it makes me get scared to get pregnant, honestly. There's a lot of reasons for this. One, of course, is the lack of access and poor quality of care, especially in low-income neighborhoods and at low-income hospitals and places that treat low-income women. But also, Black women, like I mentioned, are undervalued by the medical community. So when we do present symptoms and concerns, they're often dismissed. Serena Williams spoke out about this when she suffered a pulmonary embolism a day after her C-section, and how she literally could not breathe. And Serena Williams is a crazy amazing athlete. She is in incredible freaking shape, and she literally could not breathe, and the nurses dismissed her claims and wasted critical time before actually treating her. She could have died simply because of their negligence and their disbelief that the symptoms that she was exhibiting were real. A report called Unequal Treatment, Confronting Racial and Ethnic Disparities in Healthcare, published by the National Academy of Sciences, found that bias and stereotyping affected the care of women of color. I mean, no shocker there. Black women have to be extremely cautious and vocal when it comes to our medical treatment because we are at high risk to be ignored and possibly killed by the medical establishment because they just think that we're still slaves giving birth out in the fields, I guess, and that we don't need the medical attention that other women need. But that being said, all that history of sterilization and being ignored by the medical community, Black feminist leaders in the 1950s and 60s did ultimately embrace the pill and reject the rhetoric of mostly poor Black men who discouraged them from taking it. Most notably, Frances Beale, Angela Davis, oh my God, she's my hero, and Linda LaRue argued that without the support of the Black male father, many Black women needed birth control as a way to prevent unwanted pregnancies and poverty. We know there is a strong link between teen motherhood or unwanted pregnancy and poverty. Generally speaking, contraceptive use is regarded favorably among Black men and women today, and since the Trump era, there have been changes to women's access to the pill and to birth control. And so we as a society just need to be a lot more vigilant and a lot more aware when it comes to protecting women's rights. In fact, Trump was the first president to speak at a March for Life rally. So if that don't tell you where his priorities lie, I don't know what will. So we just need to be really, really cautious and aware of protecting women's rights to safe and affordable contraception, because if they can't find safe and affordable contraception legally, they will resort to other harmful methods like self-abortion, which is extremely, extremely dangerous. But you would be surprised to know just how many people have resorted to such kind of tactics to get rid of an unwanted fetus that they felt like they weren't ready for, couldn't support, or whatever. For me personally, birth control was extremely, extremely, extremely beneficial for me when I was younger, because, like I said, unwanted pregnancies disproportionately affect Black and Latina women, and we can't deny that link between the unwanted pregnancy and the poverty rate. If we want to achieve true generational progress and wealth and keep our Black and brown babies out of the foster care system, then we have to use contraception responsibly. We have to protect our women and our children. Conspiracy theories, so unavoidable yet so relevant in today's society. I hope you enjoyed that part 1 in-depth episode on the popular conspiracy theories in America, particularly those conspiracy theories affecting the safety of our urban communities and our Black bodies. Next episode, I'm going to keep falling down the rabbit hole, and I'm going to discuss the controversy surrounding Hurricane Katrina and the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. I'm also going to discuss the mysteries and unanswered questions that still linger after the death of Martin Luther King Jr. And last but not least, absolutely never could possibly be least, the most polarizing Black conspiracy theory of the last decade, Nipsey Hussle and Dr. CB. If you found this episode insightful, or if you have any conspiracy theories that you yourself believe, or if you want to present an opposing side to some of the opinions that I presented today, go ahead and, like I said, leave me a comment, send me a DM, and shoot me an email. Y'all, please be safe out here. Please protect yourselves. Please be wise, mindful, and make sure you're doing a good job of seeking out the information that you know will make you a better person. Until next time, cuídate, cuídate. Muchísimas gracias. Nos vemos después. Adiós.